Welcome to the SAT Writing Grammar lesson. In this section, we focus on one of the most important skills for the SAT: writing sentences that are clear, accurate, and grammatically correct. The SAT writing test is not about creativity. It's about recognizing errors and improving the structure of a sentence. That's why two grammar areas appear more often than anything else: sentence structure and agreement, including subject-verb agreement and pronoun agreement. In the next 10 minutes, we'll break these concepts down into simple, practical rules. You'll learn how to identify the subject and verb in complex sentences, how to avoid common agreement mistakes, and how to recognize fragments and run-on sentences. Here is what you can expect in this lesson. First, we'll review the basics of sentence structure. Then we'll explore agreement rules. Finally, we'll look at fragments, run-ons, and parallel structure. Let's get started. Before we can talk about agreement or grammar mistakes, we need to understand the foundation of every sentence: its structure. A sentence must have two essential parts, a subject and a verb. The subject tells us who or what the sentence is about, and the verb tells us what happens or what the subject is doing. In the SAT writing section, many questions are built around whether a sentence is complete, logical, and grammatically correct. To check this, the test often uses two types of clauses: independent clauses, which can stand alone as complete sentences, and dependent clauses, which cannot stand alone and need more information. Understanding the difference between these two types of clauses helps you recognize fragments, run-ons, and other common errors. It also helps you choose the correct punctuation and the correct verb form. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to identify the structure of any sentence quickly and accurately, a skill that will significantly improve your SAT writing score. Before you can analyze agreement or correct grammar errors, you need to be able to identify the subject and the verb of a sentence. These two elements form the core meaning of any sentence, and the SAT often tests whether you can find them correctly, especially when the sentence contains extra phrases. The subject tells us who or what the sentence is about. In many SAT sentences, the subject appears before or after a long phrase, so you must learn to ignore unnecessary details and locate the main noun. The verb shows the action or the state of being. Once you find the verb, you can check whether it matches the subject in number and form. Many sentences on the SAT include prepositional phrases, descriptive clauses, or parenthetical information designed to distract you. These parts of the sentence can make it harder to see the real subject and verb. But with practice, you will learn to quickly separate the core elements from the extra information. Identifying the subject and verb accurately is the key step that prepares you for mastering subject-verb agreement later in this lesson. Now let's look at one of the most important rules in SAT writing: subject-verb agreement. This rule simply means that the verb in a sentence must match the subject in number. A singular subject takes a singular verb, and a plural subject takes a plural verb. For example, in the sentence, "Each artist paints a portrait," the subject is each artist. Even though the word artist might sound like it could be plural, the key word, each, makes the entire subject singular. Because the subject is singular, the correct verb form is paints, not paint. Understanding this basic relationship between subjects and verbs helps you identify the core meaning of a sentence and avoid common SAT errors. As we go through more examples, pay attention to how the number of the subject determines the correct verb form. Improving this skill will make your writing clearer and more accurate, and it will boost your SAT score. Now let's take a closer look at some advanced subject-verb agreement traps that often appear on the SAT. One of the most common issues is interrupting phrases. These are parts of a sentence that come between the subject and the verb. Even if extra words appear in the middle, the verb must still agree with the original subject. For example, the manager, as well as her employees, works late. The phrase, as well as her employees, does not change the subject. The true subject is still the manager, which is singular, so the verb should also be singular: works. Next, let's review an important distinction: the number of versus a number of. The number of is treated as singular, while a number of is plural. So we say, the number of applications is incomplete, but a number of applications are incomplete. These patterns appear frequently on the test, so being able to identify the real subject, no matter how much information is added around it, is a key strategy for choosing the correct verb. Understanding these traps will save you from many avoidable mistakes. Pronoun agreement is essential for writing clear and grammatically correct sentences on the SAT. A pronoun must match the noun it replaces in three ways: number, gender, and meaning. If the noun is singular, the pronoun must be singular. If the noun is plural, the pronoun must also be plural. One of the biggest SAT issues is unclear pronoun reference. This happens when it's not obvious which noun the pronoun refers to. For example, in a sentence with multiple nouns, the pronoun they or it may create confusion. Another important point is that the SAT accepts the singular they, especially when referring to a person whose gender is unknown. Let's look at the example. The team won their final game. Here, team is treated as a collective noun, and the pronoun their correctly refers back to it in SAT-style usage. Always check that the pronoun clearly and logically refers to one specific noun, and that both match in number and meaning. On this slide, we'll look at sentence fragments, one of the most common errors tested on the SAT writing section. A fragment is simply an incomplete sentence. It might be missing a subject, missing a verb, or ending with a dependent clause that cannot stand alone. For example, although she was tired, introduces an idea but does not express a complete thought. That makes it an incomplete sentence. Fragments appear frequently on the SAT, especially when writers add dependent clauses without finishing the sentence. To fix a fragment, you can turn it into an independent clause by adding the missing subject or verb. Or, you can attach it to the previous sentence so that the full meaning becomes clear. As you practice, always check whether each sentence can stand on its own. If it cannot form a complete idea, it is very likely a fragment and needs revision. On this slide, we'll look at run-on sentences and comma splices, two errors that appear frequently on the SAT writing test. A run-on occurs when two complete sentences are joined incorrectly. A comma splice is a specific type of run-on where the sentences are joined only with a comma, which is not enough to connect two independent clauses. Fortunately, these errors are easy to fix once you know the rules. The first method is to end the first sentence with a period and start a new one. The second method is to use a semicolon when the two ideas are closely related. And the third method is to use one of the coordinating conjunctions, known by the acronym fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so, together with a comma. Let's look at the example on the slide. The exam was difficult, many students struggled. This is a comma splice because two full sentences are connected only with a comma. To fix it, we can rewrite it as, the exam was difficult. Many students struggled. Understanding these patterns will help you quickly identify and correct these errors on the SAT. Parallel structure, also called parallelism, is a key concept tested frequently on the SAT writing section. It means using the same pattern of words to show equal importance. When you create a list or series in a sentence, the forms of the items must match. For example, if you begin with a gerund like hiking, the rest of the list should also use gerunds, such as swimming and cycling. Problems occur when different grammatical forms get mixed, like combining hiking to swim and cycling. This mismatch breaks the flow of the sentence and is considered incorrect on the SAT. To maintain parallel structure, always check that each item in your list uses the same format, whether that's all gerunds, all infinitives, or all noun phrases. Let's compare two examples. The incorrect sentence is, she likes hiking, to swim, and cycling. Here, to swim disrupts the pattern. The corrected version is, she likes hiking, swimming, and cycling, which maintains a consistent structure. When reviewing SAT writing questions, pay close attention to lists, comparisons, and paired structures. Ensuring all elements follow the same grammatical pattern will help you select the correct answer with confidence. Let's take a moment to review what we've learned in this lesson. We began by looking at subject-verb agreement, understanding that the subject and verb must always match in number. This is one of the most common grammar issues tested on the SAT. Next, we covered pronoun agreement, where a pronoun must clearly and correctly match the noun it refers to. We also noted that unclear pronoun references are a frequent source of errors, and that the singular, they, is acceptable on the SAT. We then explored sentence fragments, which occur when a sentence is missing a subject, a verb, or ends with a dependent clause. Recognizing and fixing fragments is essential for writing clear, complete sentences. After that, we examined run-on sentences and comma splices, learning how to correct them using a period, a semicolon, or a coordinating conjunction with a comma. Finally, we reviewed parallel structure, which helps maintain consistency and clarity when listing ideas. Keeping the same grammatical pattern makes sentences easier to read and more precise. Now that you've seen the key concepts, it's time to put them into practice. Up next, you'll work through 3 levels of SAT-style questions: beginner, intermediate, and advanced, so you can apply these rules and strengthen your grammar skills step by step. Here is a short passage with 3 grammar mistakes. Read it carefully, check the underlined parts, and choose the option that corrects all the errors. Take a moment. Try to solve it within 1 minute. Let's go over the answer to the beginner practice question. The correct answer is A. In the passage, there were 3 grammatical issues that needed to be fixed. First, the verb phrase, was planning, was incorrect because the subject, Jamie and her friends, is plural. That means the correct verb form should be, were planning. Next, we had the phrase, they want. Since the rest of the passage is written in past tense, this verb also needs to match the tense. The correct form is, they wanted. Finally, the phrase, that it needed, was wordy and ungrammatical because it included an unnecessary extra, that. Removing the duplicated word gives us the clearer and correct form, that it needed. When we apply all 3 corrections, option A, were planning, that they wanted, that it needed, becomes the only choice that fixes every error. This type of question is very common on standardized tests because it checks your understanding of subject-verb agreement, verb tense consistency, and wordiness. Make sure to watch for unnecessary words, stay consistent with the tense of the passage, and always match the verb to the true subject of the sentence. Great work! Let's move on to the next practice. Let's try an intermediate level practice question. This passage contains several errors in subject-verb agreement and pronoun agreement. Read carefully, and see if you can identify all of the mistakes. You'll have 1 minute to think before checking the answer. Now, let's go over the answer to this intermediate grammar practice. The correct answer is D. We'll walk through each part of the sentence to understand why. First, the subject, members, is plural, so the correct verb form is, were excited. Even though, members, is followed by a long phrase, remember that the true subject remains plural. Next, in the phrase, neither the telescopes nor the tripod, the verb agrees with the noun closest to the verb. Since tripod is singular, the correct verb is, was. Third, the clause, their advisor, along with 2 senior students, looks plural, but the real subject is, advisor, which is singular. Therefore, the correct verb form is going. Finally, the pronoun, everyone, may feel plural in meaning, but grammatically it is always singular. So we must use, hopes, not, hope. When all of these corrections are combined, only option D fixes every subject-verb and pronoun agreement issue in the passage. Great work! This was a challenging problem, and understanding these patterns will help you on real SAT and academic writing tasks. Now, let's move on to the advanced practice. In this exercise, you will work with a paragraph that contains several errors involving subject-verb agreement, modifier placement, and logical consistency. Your task is to carefully read the passage and rewrite the entire paragraph in your notebook, correcting every mistake you find. You will have 120 seconds of complete silence to focus. Take your time, read closely, and try to produce a clean, fully corrected version. Your 2-minute timer starts now. Alright, here are the fixes for the advanced practice passage. First, the committee, which were, right pointing arrow, which was. Committee is a collective noun treated as singular. Next, have recently shifted, right pointing arrow, has. Again, singular. Each of the subgroups present their, right pointing arrow, presents its. Each of, is always singular, both the verb and the pronoun. So, presence, and, its, not their. This trips up almost everyone, so lock it in. Now, neither the data nor the conclusions are communicated. Both nouns are plural. Data is plural in academic English, so, are, stays correct. Don't change it to, is, that would be wrong. Finally, the parallelism in the last sentence. Insists, cites, and asking, right pointing arrow, and asks. All three verbs must match. And, researcher, right pointing arrow, research is. Research is uncountable, so singular. There you go. 7 fixes in one short paragraph. If you can nail every single one of these in 2 minutes, you're absolutely ready for the hardest agreement questions the SAT can throw at you. Great job. And here's the fully corrected version with every change applied. Read it through once more. Notice how natural and grammatically perfect it sounds now. This is exactly the level the SAT expects from top scorers. Great job today. You've completed all 3 levels of our sentence correction practice: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Across these exercises, you strengthened core writing skills like subject-verb agreement, pronoun consistency, parallel structure, and recognizing whether a sentence expresses a clear and logical idea. You also practiced correcting full paragraphs, which is a key skill for SAT writing and for strong academic writing in general. If the questions felt challenging, that's a good sign, because it means you're pushing your ability to understand how English sentences really work. As you continue learning, keep paying attention to patterns, how the verb matches the subject, how pronouns refer clearly to the right nouns, and how ideas connect smoothly within a sentence. Your progress today shows that you're developing the precision and clarity that top-level writing requires. Great work, keep going, and I'll see you in the next lesson. **